So then we go on to yachatz. So what's yachatz? Yachatz is we take the middle matzah and we break it. The smaller half is going to be used for koirich, and the bigger half, if hopefully you do have that division. Sometimes when you break matzah, they end up looking almost exact. But the bigger half then becomes known as the afikomen, and it gets hidden away. Depends which custom you have. We'll go through the different customs, but it gets hidden away to be used later at the end of Shulchan Aruch, or at the end of the meal, to be used as the afikomen, which represents the Kabalah Pesach. It's symbolic of the Kabalah Pesach that they had in the temple, in the Mishkan, and obviously on the night of Pesach when they left, when the Exodus was about to start. So this yachatz, this breaking of the middle matzah, again has many different symbolisms. The first symbolism is that you break the middle matzah, and that represents two parts. It represents koirich, which was the sandwich that Hillel made, representing when we had the temple. So it's representative of the past, which is why when we say Hallel in the Haggadah, it's actually accustomed to hold the middle matzah, because and koirich itself is symbolic of the Korban Pesach that the Jews ate 2,500 years ago in the temple, or 3,500 years ago when the Jews left Egypt. The afikomen is then said is eaten at the end of the meal, representative of the Korban Pesach that we're going to eat in the future when the second temple comes. And therefore, when we recite Hallel after the afikomen, and then we say Nirtza, which is Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim, is the hope and the prayer for the future redemption. And therefore, this middle matzah, the two halves, represent the past and the future. The koirich represents the past Korban Pesach, and the afikomen represents the future Korban Pesach of the final redemption, of when we will have the temple once again, the third temple, which is why we say we eat it just before we say Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim, well, also just before benching as well. So that's another level. Then we go to another level. The next level of this middle matzah, as we said before, that we said last time, and I think I said it last time, the middle matzah corresponds to Yitzchak. The three matzahs correspond to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yitzchak is associated with Gevurah. Each of the forefathers is associated with another emotional attribute. Abraham is the man of kindness. He would accept people into his tent. He would try and obviously get them to recognize godliness. He was known that he had an Eishel, he had a hotel, and he was known as, he symbolized chesed, the ultimate chesed. Yitzchak worked on himself. He never left Israel. He remained within the land of Israel. He focused on character refinement, and Yaakov, and therefore was Yitzchak. And Yaakov is Tiferes, the harmony. He had his entire household was pure. His children were righteous, and therefore Yitzchak is associated with Gevurah. So we take the middle matzah, which represents Gevurah, and we break it in half. The afikomen, then, according to CBDChabad at least, is broken into 5 sections. Other customs hide the afikomen itself. If you hide it behind you, as some people do, it'll get broken anyway into more than 5 sections. But the CBDChabad take the custom of breaking into 5 sections. Why 5 sections? So Kabbalistically, we are told that Gevurah has 2 parts to it. It has the positive part and there's the negative part. The positive part of Gevurah, of discipline, is obviously discipline itself, working on yourself, learning how to balance your life, having the discipline to withstand negative temptations, being focused in achieving various goals. Obviously, to achieve something, you have to be very focused. You have to be very disciplined, not get distracted. So all these are derivatives of Gevurah. The negative elements of Gevurah, there are 5 of them, and those 5 lead on to different various negative elements, such as passion for the wrong things, lust, jealousy, anger, and those are the negative elements of Gevurah. And what we do is on Pesach we break those 5. The afikomen we break into 5 parts, symbolic of the idea of that when the example is given that when you have a log which is on fire, and there comes a point when the fire begins to go out, and if you want that log to truly burn, what do? You break it. You start smashing the log apart in order to break into smaller parts to allow the fire to seep its way in and catch fire onto the entire log, to make sure the entire log continues to burn. So over here, what we do is we break the 5 parts of Gevurah, of the negative. Why? Because what we're trying to do is we are trying to allow the themes, the symbolisms, the meanings of the positive sides of Gevurah, the positive elements of discipline, of character refinement, to break in and seep its way into the negative side of Gevurah. But Gevurah itself is very hard. So what we do is we break it into to smaller parts to allow each part to be affected separately. And the hope is obviously that through this character refinement of the positive and the negative, we infuse, we allow the passion, the positive passions, the positive drives, the positive jealousy. There is a positive jealousy, and that is when you see someone achieving something great, it inspires you to achieve something great. Especially, we're told that you're allowed to be jealous of Talmidei Chacham, of wise people. You're allowed to be jealous of how much Torah that they have learned, because that inspires you to learn even more Torah. So there are positive elements to jealousy, and anger doesn't have to be negative. You can have an anger that there is that someone has done something wrong, and that inspires you to try and fix it, or inspires you to make sure you yourself to inspire you to make sure you don't do the same thing wrong. So within Gevurah, within all the negative attributes, there are also positives. And the idea of breaking this middle mat, of breaking this mat into 5 parts, of focusing on Afikomen, is to focus on fixing oneself, of refining oneself, of working on oneself, which is all part of the journey of what Pesach is all about. The reality is that as much as you want to break free, as much as you want to become a better person, if you don't break that person that you were in the past, or break that person that you are now, then you're not going free. You're still going to be held down by the same limitations that you had in the past. If you don't, the idea of breaking a habit, well, if you don't change yourself, if you don't move yourself away from that which is causing the habit, then you're just going to be the same person as you were in the past. So the whole idea of Yachas is to break down those barriers that are holding you in place and learn how to become a better person through fighting against those negative attributes, those negative elements. And the whole idea, the reason why Yachas itself is actually still within the theory, because the whole idea of Yachas is still very much symbolic. We're not talking about actually doing anything about it. We're not saying, this is what you need to do. To fight anger, we're not saying X, Y, and Z will help you fight your anger issues, or this will help, or doing X, Y, and Z will help you fight your jealousy issues. The whole idea of Yachatz is very symbolic, i.e. is telling you, work out which part of these 5 negative attributes is your issue. Not everyone has anger problems, but some do. When you work out what your negative attribute of Gevurah is, sometimes you're a very jealous person. You might be a very angry person. You might be a very lustful person. But when you work out what your particular negative attribute is, Yachas tells you that's where you need to focus on. And then that kind of defines for you where your Pesach Seder journey will take you. The reality is the Seder is different for each one of us. While obviously we all do the Seder together, but for each one of us, the journey to freedom is completely different. Because we're all different people, we're all different humans, we all have our own different challenges and obstacles. And therefore when we work out what our character refinement needs to be focused on, that in turn will help us achieve a Pesach Seder that's personalized for ourselves, and by the end of it will come out a different person, hopefully, ideally, by the time we get to Nirtza, when we eat the Afikomen, by Sofon, after the Shulchan Aruch, after the meal, when we actually eat the Afikomen, by that point, that's when we are symbolically actually now ready to do something about who we are as a person in a practical way. By that point, after 3 cups of wine, 2 cups of wine, actually, it's not that much. After 2 cups of wine, before you go into the 3rd cup of wine, after Beirach, that's when you're ready to say, you know what, I know who I am, or I know who I was. I know what needs to be changed. And then we continue on with Sofon, the consumption of these negative elements, which is eating Afikomen, to go on through to Nirtza, where we ideally have refined ourselves enough on a micro level that we can say, I need to achieve X, Y, and Z this year after the Pesach Seder is over, and I don't have matzah in my system anymore, I can actually eat normally. But this is who I am as an individual that I need to work on in the coming year to make the world a better place for those around me, for the workplace, for the environment, and ultimately, hopefully, to help herald the Mashiach.